Hey everybody, and welcome to the Daily Space Weather. We're just watching Nibiru form there in the southeastern limb of the sun. So that's always an interesting thing. Nibiru there, Planet X, otherwise known as Nemesis, Elohim, and all kinds of other various names. So there it is. There's Earth's evil twin forming right there before your very eyes. We'll talk about it and lots more on today's Daily Space Weather video. And thanks for tuning into the Smash News Network. Least busted name in news. That is a 24-hour SDO video. And yeah, there it is. There's Nibiru. Don't worry, we'll show it in other wavelengths as well. Here's the last 24 in ionized helium plus ionized iron, 304 plus 193 angstroms. You may see a CME happening there in the lower right. That would be the southwestern limb. Also, a large prominence occurred in the northeastern limb, your upper left. You may also see a bunch of activity happening up here, a crown prominence, also a crown prominence down here, and don't forget the Cornell West filament named by one of our Twitter followers. So here's this CME that happened in the southwestern limb. That was a good one. It actually occurred while we did yesterday's live stream. If you missed it, go check it out. You can find that on our live videos list on the YouTube channel. And if you're watching on BitChute, get real. View the content on YouTube. You're missing most of it by only viewing the videos on BitChute. So once again, here's Nibiru. Yeah, Nibiru forming there. By the way, it's a carbon-free planet, as we covered on yesterday's live stream. Yeah, Nibiru, it's a carbon-free planet. And thanks for leaving a comment, Mike. Hopefully you're feeling better today. Here is the northeastern limb in these wavelengths. And there are massive filaments littering the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk. The likelihood of coronal mass ejections remains at just about 100%. In other words, expect more in the coming days. Here's a close-up of this prominence area. See that little sudden impulse there of plasma. And we're delighted that you are back. Mike and all the rest of our viewers, cheers. Thanks for tuning in. Here's the equatorial view, and we've got at least 2 new named sunspot groups to get names in the northeastern limb. That would be up in your upper left. And we've got a coronal hole high-speed stream that's arriving just about on time, as per our forecast yesterday. Once again, here's the southwestern limb. You can see that CME, and once again a hider flare, as you can see some brightening there as that plasma leaves. That is plasma splashing back down toward the chromosphere, creating a little bit of higher X-ray output there. And here are these wavelengths. This is 211 plus 171 angstroms. That filament activity there in the southeastern limb, ahead of 2 additional south pole oriented coronal holes, behind 2 additional south pole oriented coronal holes. Those dark regions there, those are solar radio jets known as coronal holes, and those are a pretty important feature of solar activity indeed. By the way, you may notice that this video does include a paid affiliate link. That would be the Hemp Lucid shop. So if you are shopping for products at Hemp Lucid, like your CBD tinctures, your mushroom gummies, your CBNs, perhaps Delta 8s, whatever you're looking for there, make sure you enter the promo code SMASHOMASH to save 10% on checkout. And pardon my key colors, I'm wearing black today. We'll talk about that in a moment. Again, enter the promo code SMASHOMASH to save 10% on checkout at Hemp Lucid. Visit the links below the video. You'll find the Hemp Lucid link in the description. Today's featured product on the Amazon shop is The Art of War by Sun Tzu. If you haven't read it, one of the tidbits of wisdom in The Art of War by Sun Tzu is, if your enemy is screwing up real bad, don't attack him until he's done self-sabotaging. Yeah, if somebody that's your enemy is self-sabotaging, don't interrupt them. That and more words of wisdom in The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Other martial arts books are findable there on the list. Amazon.com/shop/Smashomash. So help out the channel by doing your shopping via our links. Links below the video there as well. Again, we've got two new named sunspot groups, two new soon-to-be named sunspot groups that just rose up here in the Northeast. Once again, as forecast yesterday. Besides that, not a lot of major changes happening here. Most of these groups pretty stable. This one does feature some accelerating leading umbra there, spreading away from the trailing North Pole-oriented umbrae. There is the SDO colorized magnetogram view. That is yesterday plus today. So we can expect a general uptick here in solar activity here. We'll see an increase in the radio flux and the sunspot number, which I think has actually surpassed the radio flux number. And before we look at more space weather stats, let's see what's going on with volcanoes. So Shivaluch continues to erupt and produce a 12,000-foot ash plume. That's a flight level 120, flight level 060 over Suwanosejima. Mount Mayan continues an uptick here. Unknown volcanic ash plume there from the Philippine volcano, Mount Mayan. Kilauea continues to produce a low-level effusive eruption as new real estate gets built in Kilauea. Popocatépetl exploding, producing an 18,000-foot ash plume, flight level 180, flight level 150 over Guatemala from Sanchaguito, now back on the list. Fuego, flight level 170 over Fuego. Not sure about Sangay, but Sabancaya is producing a 21,000-foot plume of volcanic ash. Please don't pole vault the caldera. It's a flight level 210 if you're flying. Here's the past 90 days of earthquake activity, and we did have one significant quake early this morning. It was at depth at the Philippines. There is the location of that 6.2 magnitude shaker. It was at over 112 kilometers estimated depth there, exactly 112 kilometers estimated depth, and unlikely to have produced a tsunami. That came in at 2:19 this morning. Let's cover the quakes that are of a 5 magnitude or higher for the past 24 hours. There was a 5.5 at the Kermadec Islands. That 5.5 occurred at 16:53 Universal Time yesterday afternoon. It's been very quiet for earthquakes here. A very low number of earthquakes in general, and not a lot of large earthquakes. So there's a 5.0 at the Kermadec Islands as well. That was at 1:58 this morning, only about 20 minutes before this 6.2 at the Philippines. And in between there, at 1:46, there was another 5.1 at the Kermadec Islands. Please remember that those could be foreshocks. Any of those could be foreshocks. And it's time to return to space. Space, a frontier. These are the voyages of the awesome imagery we show daily on the channel. We realized that there is a niche in the realm of space weather, and we noticed nobody was reporting the stuff that we're reporting. So, yeah, we decided to fill that niche and keep that niche devoid of nonsense propaganda and general crap, which is oh so common on YouTube, as people are paid millions of dollars a year to put up crap. Here we've added 131 angstroms to the 171 angstroms wavelength to add a little bit of detail there. And the most active flaring regions were indeed around the four corners, so the flares were all around the limbs, which is a perfect time to talk about Eugene's paper, but I'll just have to pass on that because it is the daily space weather. Make sure you see our previous videos. Check out our playlists. You'll find the Diamond Anvil Too Hard to Smash where we talk about it. So there is that southwestern limb. Some active regions setting there. And of course some flares emanating from that area. And let's get to our space weather stats. So the 10.7 centimeter radio flux is actually only at 146 solar flux units. So there is the, what's going on here? There is the radio flux in a 1-year chart. Again, 146, surprisingly low radio flux number. In fact, the sunspot number has now gone up to like 160. So you can expect a big uptick in the radio flux coming by tomorrow. If you're not familiar with the radio flux, the sun emits radio frequency at the 10.7 centimeter wavelength. And that is consistent with solar activity in general. So if you go back to there's 2006. If we show the sunspot situation for that same period, there's about 2006. You can see how similar those graphs are. The upper graph is the sunspot number. The lower graph is the radio flux. They are directly proportional indicators of solar activity overall. Looking at the Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard here, no geomagnetic storms or geomagnetic unrest is forecasted. NOAA is expecting us to get close to geomagnetic unrest conditions from midday tomorrow until late day tomorrow. So this high density portion of the coronal hole high speed stream is showing up pretty much as forecast here. We'll get to that in a moment. First Earth's magnetic moment from space for the past 4 hours. That is what a proton experiences when it shows up. So keep in mind, solar protons are traveling at very high speeds, and when they reach Earth's magnetosphere, they're forced to make a decision. Are they going to deflect off of it, or are they going to slow down massively and become part of it? That's the past 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from space. Here are the past 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from the ground. And we do have a little bit of uptick in geomagnetism here. It is because of the high density portion of the coronal hole high speed stream showing up. Also, we saw an increase in the magnetic fields, which we will also cover. KP index is currently at 1.66. 1.666666, 1 point bar 6, which is rounded to 1.67. The planetary K index, which is general global geomagnetism. It's an average. So here you can see this little density wave happening here at the same time, but the most important story here is this top pane. So this top pane here is the magnetic field and the vertical component. So the BT is the total field strength that is in nanotesla. It's currently at 11 nanotesla with a BZ of -5. So if this continues to uptick in terms of the density and the speed, even just staying at a BT of 11 and a BZ of -5 is sufficient to create geomagnetic unrest conditions. Keep in mind, this is not likely the maximum. We're expecting to see a much higher solar wind density coming here in the coming hours. Don't be surprised to see that go up to like 30 protons per cubic centimeter there for a brief period, before seeing that drop back off and the solar wind speed coming up. Current conditions are quite slow for the solar wind speed at only 371 kilometers a second. Solar wind density 6.2 protons per cubic centimeter. The GOES magnetometers here not showing any big changes. A little bit of maneuvering was done there by the GOES 16 to maintain its geosynchronous near equatorial orbit. That's the arc-jet moment that you see around noontime yesterday local time for the satellite. And around midnight local time recently for the GOES 18, we saw a divergence there in the readings. The GOES 18 is dropping down to 56.7 nanotesla, and the GOES 16 is up to 94.5 nanotesla. That's midnight local time for the GOES 18. So those are the magnetometers. Expect to see those get a lot more jiggy in the coming days. Expect to see a sawtooth looking pattern on that, and some more wild variations in the magnetometer as a result of the coronal hole high-speed stream. Now, next we're looking at the heliospheric current sheet, and this is 11 years ago. So we went back 11 years to show the view here, our top view ecliptic plane field plot. And we wanted to show this just to show how different it was at last cycle around this time. So you've got stereo A and B out here, first of all. You can see how far away from the Earth they are versus where they are now. And also I would note that there are 4 current sheets. You've got 2 sector boundary crossings here. You know, you've got a South Pole current sheet, and then a North Pole current sheet, and then another South Pole current sheet, and then another North Pole current sheet. Very different from what we have now. Also, I would note that there is a little bit of South Pole magnetism still hanging out at the heliographic pole, but a very small amount. Now, if we bring up the latest image, these are the past 4 days of this year. You can see the current sheet is looking way different way different than it did 11 years ago. So this could have to do with the variability of the solar cycles themselves. It could have to do with the underlying mechanism that drives the sunspot cycles. It could have to do with some sort of internal stuff going on. Who knows? Does the sun have a solid body? Let us know in the comments what you think. There is increasing evidence that the sun has a solid body inside of the liquid portion underneath the real surface of the star. Anyway, that's the current top view ecliptic plane field plot depicting the heliospheric current sheet. Earth is right in the middle of a south pole oriented current sheet shown in red. Here's our line of sight field plot. You can see that B field fanning out there. Again, we're right in the middle of the south pole oriented current sheet. And that is populated by radio jets in the form of coronal holes. So these coronal holes, these are locations where there are solar protons blasting out, creating what we'd call the Parker spiral, as plasma spews out of those coronal holes at high speeds. The high-speed wind is what we're getting right now from this coronal hole. So that's the last 4 days there of our line-of-sight coronal hole plot. We'll show coronal holes from SDO 211 angstroms wavelength as well. And there you have that. That is the past 24 hours. And again, we are expecting a more significant density increase and an extended coronal hole high-speed stream that could last as many as like 4 days, as there is quite a bit of coronal hole there in the transequatorial type. In other words, it's touching the equator. Those are the most geo-effective type of coronal holes. So we can expect a little bit of an uptick in space weather, at least from Earth's perspective, and also at Sun's perspective because, well, an uptick in sunspots, which is what we're on next. So sunspots are kind of important to solar cycle progression, wouldn't you say? So here's the situation. So we ended up with 3 groups in the southeast, which would be 3333, 3335, and 3336. And behind 3334 up there in the north, again, there are 2 new groups that'll get names today. Those just rose. Those increase the probability of solar flares, and these new groups will also raise the radio flux. Looking at sunspots here from SDO's perspective, there are the past 24 hours. Again, mostly stable here, no major changes. A little bit of acceleration of those umbrae in the lower left. It's pretty minor. For the most part, these sunspot groups have been stable for the past 24 hours. And let's move on to energetic particles and solar flares. So, I mean, 304 angstroms, folks, is a good wavelength to view solar flares. It does work. It's not perhaps the optimal wavelength, but 304 angstroms is great at viewing things like prominences and filaments. So again, keep your eye on this filament down here, the Cornell West filament, hanging out right at the heliographic south polar region. That one is quite likely to become unstable. This one up here is already unstable. It looks like it's still moving around. So lots of stuff going on here as far as plasma activity. Again, the likelihood of coronal mass ejections remains at nearly 100%. As far as energetic particles go, the proton flux remains flatlined here for an extended period of time. No major flares and no major spikes in the proton flux. We've only seen C-class intensifications, like this double peak, which I believe was from the northwestern limb. Let's take a look at that in 94 angstroms. That would be yesterday plus today. I guess that zoom level is all right. Again, the flare activity is coming from the 4 corners here, which the limbs are slightly more likely to produce an X-class flare. So that's pretty interesting. Does it tell us something about the heliophysics? Maybe. If you've got ideas about it, let us know in the comments. And let's move on to a star chart, shall we? Here's what's going on overhead Lehigh Valley. I press the now button, and there you go. The moon and Jupiter are in Aries, I think. I don't know. But there's a great crescent moon up there. If you're up before dawn, you might see Jupiter, the moon, Mercury, and Saturn. And if you're up around dusk, you might see Mars and Venus close together there. So great stargazing both pre-dawn and post-dusk. At the moment, here's your solar system forecast. This is today, and we're only 6 days from the solstice. By the way, we'll be streaming live at the moment of the solstice. More information on that a little bit later. Here is your 1-week solar system forecast. As a new moon approaches, that's where things will be in a week. On the 22nd, the first full day of summer in the Northern Hemisphere. Next, coronagraphs. And we did have CMEs as forecast. They are not earthly directed as far as we can tell. This is 103 frames from yesterday. Just some minor coronal mass ejection activity, and expect this to continue ramping up. Again, likelihood of additional coronal mass ejections is, I'll just say 99.9%. I mean, maybe it's possible for no CMEs to happen here. I suppose it probably statistically is. It's just really unlikely. So that's 31 more frames from today. And here are some more images here. This C2 NC3, part of the SOHO spacecraft. We want to show stereo A also. We show this diagram to show how close it is to the Earth. It's not providing a lot of parallax to help calculate the trajectories of coronal mass ejections, but these all look like little more than light shows. So none of those new CMEs are likely to have earthly directed components, unfortunately. Sorry about that, folks. I know many of you are hoping to see the aurora at mid-latitudes. We have to have a pretty strong strike for that to happen in the summertime. So let's get back to our custom videos. Here we are back at 304 angstroms. And here is the 171 angstroms house favorite wavelength. Once again, these are 24-hour videos. And let's switch to our coronagraph. So there is a coronagraph view. You've got the 193 angstroms SDO wavelength there in the middle. SOHO LASCO C2 in red, SOHO LASCO C3 in blue, all time synced for your viewing pleasure. Number 1, I order you to zoom in. Engage. So there are those CMEs. Again, we do not anticipate those having any earthly directed components. There's a slightly closer view. And some of that plasma is coming from the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk. They're just kind of off to the, well, the northeast and the southwest. Mainly the west. And it's a great example of how you can see a CME that happens here. You would expect it to go this way. But this one actually went this way. So a solid 30 degrees off of where you might have expected it to go. Here's just the 193 angstroms wavelength by itself. Again, the story continues to be filaments. I mean, huge plasma filaments here, new sunspots, coronal holes of the South Pole orientation all over the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk. If it looks like the sun is shutting down, it's an illusion. And if somebody keeps telling you that it's a grand solar minimum, they're experiencing either a delusion or they're committing fraud. In other words, if they are intentionally misrepresenting material facts, that's called fraud. That's literally the definition of fraud. I'm an insurance agent. I'm a licensed insurance agent in like 28 states. So let's get back to our space data here. Filaments. Filaments are a big deal. They tend to turn into coronal mass ejections. And there are still a lot of huge ones on the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk. There you can see them from the ground-based observatory at El Teide, Spain. Filaments. If you want to name filaments after living people, join us on Twitter. Follow the hashtag, name that filament. And there is the Twitter profile. And if you do follow us on Twitter, you might even see our tweets, although I'm not sure about that. Good luck. Good luck with any big tech sites functioning as advertised. They are all utter garbage. Utter garbage. Criminal organizations, in fact. So here's the past 2.5 hours from the GOES 18 SUVI, ionized helium. And you can see that crown prominence there. It looks like it's encircling the sun here in the opposite direction of rotation. I mean, check it out. You see the sun rotates this way. This crown prominence is rotating, the opposite way. Viewing from the North Pole, it would be going clockwise. So that's one to keep an eye on for sure. It's a shame we don't have any instruments on the far side of the sun to continue watching that solar polar vortex, which formed on cue, right as I suggested it would. And let's move to our bonus features segment. Starting with satellite charging hazards. Guess what? There ain't none. It's smooth sailing. No charging hazards of the internal or surface variety. The GOES electron flux here is going to remain quite low. Again, we're seeing the arrival of a coronal hole high-speed stream. So that's the GOES electron flux for the past 3 days. There it is for the past year. Again, expecting low levels to continue here. And NOAA is agreeing with the forecast. So there's NOAA's forecast for the relativistic electrons. They are measured at the F layer of the ionosphere. Feel free to pause the video on this frame if you're not familiar with these distances, electromagnetic radiation penetration, chemical concentrations, temperatures, etc. Here's the F layer in its vibrational frequency. And we can expect anomalies to start showing up in the ionosphere because, well, coronal hole high-speed stream. Again, we are expecting the density to get quite a bit higher than it is. I'm expecting it to go up to, say, 26 protons per cubic centimeter. That is my back-of-the-napkin math based on the data that I see. Anyway, this is the ionosphere. We will let that play through and then show the anomalygram, as this might be Greek to you. It is pretty hard to read, I gotta admit. We put the data on the videos daily because you never know when archived information could become useful. So this is the anomaly in megahertz from a 30-day median. Again, it's shown daily on the channel. And it's from the Australian Government Bureau of Meteorology. So we are seeing some interesting spikes here, actually. Some sudden high-frequency anomalies happening. Right there was like a global pulse. So that was interesting. I don't remember ever seeing that before. A global high-frequency anomaly pulse there in the ionosphere layer. That's pretty interesting. But the low-frequency type anomalies are much more common during coronal hole high-speed streams and CME impacts. And it has to do with the ionosphere puffing up when major space weather events happen. Let's just show the latest image since that's played through a couple of times. There it is, 11:15 Universal Time ionogram and anomalygram. We like to show the total electron content also, as it is giving us insight into the Earth environment with respect to space weather. Total electron content depicts free electrons to about 12,500 miles of altitude, the location of your GPS satellite. Here is a count of electrons. And we do indeed see electrons quite a bit out of place here in the southern hemisphere once again. So there you can see large electron anomalies happening in the southern Indian Ocean, the Southern Ocean, Antarctica, the South Atlantic, and south of Africa. We'll let it play through one more time to show the global view, and then we'll show just the North American anomaly. So that is your coupled thermosphere, ionosphere, plasmasphere electrodynamics model. Here's North America depicting the anomaly from the 10-day average. Doesn't look like any major anomalies going on over the U.S. or North America in general at the moment. And let's close out space weather with the latest high-res imagery. So here are these new sunspots. Let me get a little bit better zoom there. There you go. So this sunspot already has a name. These two are about to get names. This one is the most magnetically complex, it looks like. This one's barely beta class. This one is probably alpha class. This one is certainly beta gamma class at least. That group down there, well, let's see. We're going to get them both on screen here. There are those two groups. This is beta gamma delta class, and this is beta gamma delta class also. And it looks like another sunspot rising behind this group. So again, solar uptick continues. If you thought the sun was shutting down, you're just incorrect. I mean, these are just basic facts. If you've painted yourself into a corner, please come out, get ahead of your mistakes, admit them, and move on. Don't try to gaslight people, because you will just end up looking pathetic. You'll end up being pathetic and looking pathetically. So here is the mean sea level pressure. Yeah, the mean sea level pressure. And I want you to notice one thing. Look at this high pressure zone. It's known as an anticyclone. These rotate clockwise in the northern hemisphere. And can you see the way the winds are emanating out from it? See, the winds are coming out, radiating from it? That's what happens with a high pressure zone. Imagine pushing your hand in a kiddie pool. The high pressure under your hand would radiate outward. And it would also create low pressure eddies around there to reach static equilibrium. Low pressure is completely different. This is pulling air toward it. Yeah, low pressure systems, they suck. High pressure systems blow. Low pressures rotate counterclockwise in the northern hemisphere. And the U.S. has quite a lot of low pressure. At the current time. So anyway, just figured I would show pressure briefly. The lowest pressure in the world, not surprisingly, is, well, probably in the Southern Ocean, as that typhoon making landfall by India and Pakistan has broken down quite a bit. You're going to see a lot less convection as that system gets closer and closer to land. It's definitely weakened since yesterday. Anyway, here are our regularly scheduled totally sweet wind maps. There is the surface wind scenario for the east. A strong low rotating clockwise there in the southern hemisphere, as they do south of Australia. It's strong and large. And here are the jet streams. Here are the jet streams of the west. Cold air continuing to blow in from Canada there over Lake Superior and Lake Michigan. Here are the surface winds. And a strong offshore wind there at places like Georgia and the Carolinas. May make for good surf, I'm not sure. Let us know in the comments if you are hanging 10. Here are the surface winds of the central world, and these are the jet streams. Moving right along to our satellite imagery. I'm just going to press refresh on that. Give it a moment. It's well worth it, as we've got some strong storms here moving across the central Gulf states. So Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina, especially some little whispers there moving into North Carolina. Great imagery there of cloud tops as the sun rises. Some strong storms here making their way into Georgia, the Florida Panhandle. Even some weather there coming off the Gulf as rapid cloud nucleation occurs. Let's zoom in one more step. That is some sweet imagery for you. Courtesy of Windy.com's fantastic satellite interpolation. As it transfers from shortwave radiation map to visible. That's why you see a little bit of a disparity there in the feed. It has to try to fade from nighttime wavelengths to daytime wavelengths. Next, clouds and fog over the full view of the Americas. Of course, NASA here projecting a fake spherical Adobe Photoshop version of Earth onto this fake spherical model. Everybody knows Earth is shaped like a croissant, the French breakfast pastry. What, are you going around telling people Earth is shaped like a sphere or that it's flat and there's a snow globe over it? What the hell? Everybody knows, everybody who watches our channel knows that Earth is shaped like a croissant. Get real. Stop believing NASA's lies. Didn't you ever hear of Operation Paperclip? NASA was funded by actual Nazis, you idiot. That means that they have incentive to prove to you that the Earth is shaped like a sheep's bladder. Anyway, here's our weather.gov map. And if your location is lit, click your location. Lots of weather warnings there, including frost advisories for large portions of Nevada, excessive heat warnings for parts of Texas and Florida, and flood warnings there for the Gulf states that we just showed. Weather.gov is the place to get your warnings, and here are some forecasts. So there's the GFS 72-hour forecast. You can see some very strong storms here are expected to pop up in eastern Kansas and Missouri. Those might be supercell producing storms indeed. Those look quite bad. So heed those weather warnings. That's your 72-hour GFS pressure and precipitation forecast. Here is your GFS 72-hour total accumulated precipitation forecast. And like we said yesterday, expecting heavy rains there in the Florida Panhandle and especially Alabama and Georgia. 3 inches plus of rain expected there, and a little more rain coming to Pennsylvania. Thank goodness the drought has already ended. We're going to have some healthy plants and some fast-growing grass in the mid-Atlantic states. Also, Jersey getting a little bit of a respite from its extreme drought conditions. That's a good thing as well. Also, some heavy rains coming to Colorado and some parts of places like the Dakotas and Nebraska. Last but not least, here's your jet stream forecast. As the jet stream has been highly incoherent, the northern part of it is going to remain incoherent as the jet stream is all split up. The southern portion of it is going to still look like a jet stream. The northern portion is just all over the place. So you can expect some weird weather patterns to continue, especially in the northern part of the country. That is your GFS 72-hour 250 millibar wind forecast. It's depicting the jet stream. Next, our lightning mapper. And some heavy lightning there went across the Gulf states, and it's continued. It's continuing to this moment, actually. And here's your current lightning map. We are anticipating to see a lot of terrestrial strikes. So, hey, Columbus, there is weather on the way, and you can expect to get hit repeatedly as these systems will train, meaning this area is going to get hit by this storm, and then this storm, and then this storm, and then this storm, like a train of storms hitting the same areas. So that's your real-time lightning map. Some quite active cells there over the central Gulf states. There's the full world view there. That is where the lightning is currently striking, at least as far as the locations that have sensors. And by the way, if you're interested in the coverage map, there is actually a coverage map here. Let me see if I can show that. Let's see. The coverage map. See if you show that right there. It'll show the stations. There's a coverage map. So as you can see, the whole world does not have coverage for this. We don't usually show that. Just keep in mind that it does not show all the world's lightning strikes. You have to have sensors in order for that. By the way, if you would like additional content, hit us up over at smashomash.com. We created our own website back in 2019 in response to the ridiculous, pathetic, and censorship-based downfall of Meta, formerly known as Facebook, the company who can't even get out of its own way, recently fined billions of dollars for something in Ireland. I don't know. They just suck at their own jobs. Big tech, why do they suck so hard at their own jobs? Why are they paid so much to produce software that barely functions on its best day and doesn't function half the days? Today's featured product is Smasher Price My First Scamdemic. Congratulations on surviving one so far. If you'd like a souvenir, perhaps pick up ours. I'm wearing it right now. And it's one of our first pieces of merch, actually. It features the .org, smashomash.org. Yeah, did you know we have the .org? Yeah, we do, folks, because we are about to file for our nonprofit agency. That'll be great because people will be able to donate tax deductibly. And one of the ways you can donate now is by picking up merch. So you can find links at the homepage at smashomash.com. Just click this link right here to Smasho Merch. You'll find our merch shop, and one of the products you'll find there is Smasher Price My First Pandemic. Congratulations on surviving your first pandemic so far. You're doing a fine job not being dead. So lots of different products available there with this design. It may be too provocative for you. If so, then don't buy any. If you want additional content, become a member of the Smash Team at smashomash.com/Smash Team. Hit us up on social media, etc. Smashomash.com/Smash Team. Thanks to our Gold and Silver Smash Team members. You should be thanking them as well, as these are the people that are increasing the probability these videos will continue to remain existent. Yeah, existent. Smashomash.com/Smash Team for additional content that nobody else gets to see. There's also a bronze level there for those of you unable or unwilling to open your cobweb-encrusted wallet. Next, let's look at U.S. Doppler radar to close this thing out. There is, again, a series of heavy storms there. They're moving east-southeast. And, for example, Montgomery is going to get hit a few times. Also Columbus, as those storms are just moving in a straight line. We'll zoom out to show the full 50 states of ALSA, the allegedly United States of America. There's a lower 48 view. Let's don't forget clouds and fog. And there is water vapor, and you can see a bit of an impulse there of dry massive air behind those systems, edging them along. When your Doppler is unclear, break out the water vapor map. These systems are going to move in a very predictable fashion. So that is the Doppler radar. No serious tricks going on there. That is going to be fairly consistent with what you see on the radar. Here is clouds and fog. And there is water vapor. That's what you want to use, folks, when your Doppler radar map is unclear. Try the water vapor map. If you understand atmospheric physics, you'll be able to forecast your own weather. We certainly hope that you can. And thanks for leaving comments. Once again, Mike. Thanks everybody who tuned in to the premiere. By the way, these videos are coming live to YouTube soon, so pretty soon there won't be premieres because the videos will be live and people like you will be able to interact directly. So since I'm scared of space interacting with me directly, it's time to head back to the bunker where it's safe. So bye and good luck not being in a bunker. What?